Hello, welcome to our series, LITE Saturdays with Kwadwo and Kwesi from EduTransform. We have done series of sessions and now we're moving on to another series titled Enabling Learning. And in this particular series, we will be dealing with a lot of issues that help us to deal with students learning and how students can also make progress as they learn. My name is Kwadwo, and as usual, I have my colleague on the other side, Kwesi. Kwesi, how are you?
I'm good, Kwadwo.
Right. I believe we now have the opportunity to now delve deeper into the heart of the issues that affect our students and the work that we do, and that is learning. And in this series, we want to look at what we need to do to enable learning. We're going to have this done in a 5-part series. In the first of it, we're going to be talking about why so many of our students make slow progress. In the next one, lesson 2, we'll look at effective techniques to aid students recall. How do we help students to remember and recall the things we've taught them? We'll also look at how to create multiple pathways for meaningful learning. How do we use different opportunities to help students to learn? Students that learn differently, how do we reach all of them? How do we build literacy and numeracy skills across the curriculum? We'll need to spend time to look at the very importance of literacy and numeracy skills in all subjects, and how do we use this to build student skills? And then finally, in our last of this series, we'll be looking at using formative assessment to improve students' learning and achievement. Without wasting more time, let's look at the key skills or objectives we have for our very first lesson in this series. And we are capturing our objectives in the framework of what, why, and how. Under the what, we want to find learning outcomes at a glance. Learning outcomes at a glance. We want to understand students and why they make little or no progress. And then also we want to learn how to lift student performances in our schools. How to lift students' performances in our schools. So this is what we're going to be focusing on in this very first episode of this particular series. So, Kwesi, let's start with learning outcomes. What do we know about learning outcomes in our educational system?
All right. Thank you very much, Kwadwo, for that question. I'll refer to the World Development Report 2018 by the World Bank, in which they talk about education, realizing education's promise. And they clearly distinguish between schooling and learning. That schooling is the time that a student spent in a school. And what comes out of it is a learning. What actually the student is able to know, understand, and can do at the end of maybe 5 hours or 2 hours or 6 hours spent in the school, which is the schooling. What a student gains at the end of that experience is what they were referring to as learning. And they concluded that there are millions of kids in our schools that are schooling, but they are not learning. And in this report, Africa and Ghana featured prominently. And I would like to make references to some of the outcomes that this particular report indicates or outlines. If you look at the primary level, it shows that there is a shortfall in learning very early in the educational phase of a student, of a child. And if you look at this particular report, you will see here that about 80 plus students in Ghanaian schools, according to the report, who are in grade 2, they are not able to read a single word of a short text. And again, 80 plaques of them cannot do or perform a 2-degree subtraction problem that is posed to them. So compare with other nations, as you can see in the chart, you will see here that yes, Malawi is kind of worse off than Ghana in that regard. And surprisingly, if you look at Ghana in as far as grade 2 mathematics is concerned, Ghana seems to be a bit better off than India in terms of the percentage, where about 60+%, where India has about 80+% of kids who are not able to do that. Of course, in terms of population-wise, you might understand, but it tells you that there's something.
Also, this categorization, this percentage calculation is based on the total population compared to the number of students we have in our schools.
No, using the number of kids in the school at the grade level, grade 2, in terms of population of kids in the school.
Okay, so they compare the total number of students at those grade levels across the countries.
Yes, across the country. And I mean, if you look at the references, they actually reference a number of literature or publications by the local educational researchers where they got these data from. So, but I think the heart of it is that there is clearly numeracy and literacy skill gaps very early in the phase of our educational system. So let's look at the secondary level. I mean, that's the primary. If you look at the secondary level, with the results that was released by WAEC, if you look at WAEC results performance in the core subjects of math, English, science, and then social studies, which normally are the grades in these subjects that the universities will make admission decisions. And if you look at the maths and English, which is the language scores or percentage passes, you will see here that from 2016 to 2020, especially between 2018 and 2019, in English language, there was a dip in the performance. Less than half of the students were actually getting the required passes for you to.
The required pass here is A1 to C6.
C6. So, I mean, between 2018 and 2019, more than half of the students who sit for these exams. And you know the numbers that sit for these exams. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids, Ghanaian kids, that sit for these exams. So here again,
about half of them don't get the grades required to go to the universities or tertiary institutions.
Exactly. Right. So it was even worse if you look at the numeracy part, where from 2016 to 2018, you're talking about averagely of 30 or 40% of them really passing in mathematics, right? Even though from 2019 up onwards, the trend has changed. We've seen some increase in the passing rate, about 65+% in that rate, right? So it tells you that still we, even at the secondary level, we still have literacy and numeracy gaps that students really struggle with, and that affects the overall performance of students that make the transition to experience tertiary education. So it's not surprising that if you look at the World Bank website, Ghanaian data on it indicate that in 2019, 17.2% students actually experienced tertiary education in this country. That is a gross tertiary enrollment ratio in Ghana. I've heard recently that the government is saying that they want to push this to about 40%. But
what does this one also mean? Does it mean out of the students' population in the country, only 17.23% get enrollment into tertiary institutions?
Yes, so here you are looking at the number of students who are actually enrolled in the university, irrespective of age, divided by the total population of that age group that is supposed to be
Oh, okay.
entering tertiary education. And
Mhm.
17.25% of that population is actually accessing tertiary education now. And like I
Wow.
said, the government indicated, I think, if the State of Nation address, that they want to push this to about 40%
Mm.
in terms of tertiary gross tertiary enrollment ratio. So this tells you that the literacy and numeracy gaps, right, that starts early in the school life of a child is one bigger challenge that really accounts for students in our nation not making the required or desirable progress
Mm.
through their phase of learning in school, and that clearly explains why, I mean, not surprisingly, that the World Bank found out in 2018 that we have a number of kids in school, but many of them are not benefiting from that experience. Even though we know with the free SHS, a number of government policies and reforms, Ghana has actually done very well in
Yeah.
increasing access
Mm-hmm.
to education. But the outcomes is a bit worrisome in terms of the number of kids that are actually benefiting from these
Mm.
access to education. And I think all the efforts that are being done is all geared towards improving what do you call it, the quality of education and ensuring that the outcomes will be very good. But what is
Mm.
even worrying in the statistics, if we look again at the World Development Report in 2018, I'm focusing a bit on Ghana, and here we are talking about the percentage of time lost, teach instructional time lost,
Mm-hmm.
and it tells you that about half of the teaching day is actually lost. I mean, the time that is scheduled for learning within the school
Mm-hmm.
time, uh, we lose about a third of the instructional time, not for learning. And because of teacher absenteeism, or because of the fact that the low time on tax when students are in class, time on tax when students are in class, copying notes, we're not maximizing the instructional time to really enable meaningful learning for our students, surprisingly. And that, for me, uh, combined with the literacy and numeracy gaps, kind of present a very toxic situation, explaining the slow progress or no progress that some students unfortunately do not experience while they spend their years in school.
Wow, that is really revealing and very shocking also to know that outcomes are very low across a lot of our countries and our schools. And the fact that instructional time is lost, about one third of instructional time is lost due to absenteeism, low time on task, and all the others. How does professional development help in addressing these gaps?
I think professional development is very critical, and that is what I mean. Organizations like EduTransform, we are committed in doing, in providing access to high quality professional learning for
Mhm.
the African educator, so that they can give their best in the classroom and enable learning for any child anywhere. And
Mhm.
I mean, that is our focus, as our mission. And I, critical to this is our ability to connect educators' continuous professional development to students' learning.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if we look at the learning outcomes as we have discussed, the gaps of literacy and numeracy, and also the good use of the instructional time to really maximize meaningful learning experiences for kids are certain gaps that can be addressed with appropriate job embedded professional development for educators, so that we can move towards getting better outcomes. Again, if you point to the same research, the World Development Report in 2018, you will be surprised that a number of people within the work environment in Ghana and other parts of Africa are actually not getting access to quality professional development, right? And the report indicates that though, except those who have some level of education, above secondary education or degree holders tends to have some little access to professional learning, but a number of people actually do not really access professional learning. So if you look at it in terms of age group in Ghana, those within the age group of 25 to 44 get that's about 10% of them. When they were asked in the last 12 months, whether they have participated in any workplace training, that many of them were not able to really say yes to that particular question. So you could see that the percentages are very low in terms of access to professional learning compared to their counterparts in the developed world, where or in Singapore, in Shanghai, where professional development is a key aspect of the teacher's growth and development. And that is why those countries or economies are known to be the haven of quality educational service delivery. And I think that if we want to really improve the quality of learning in our schools, then I think that beyond the curriculum reforms, beyond the leadership reforms, beyond the teacher education reforms, one aspect that we have to look at critically is actually building the capacity of educators who are actually in the classroom teaching our kids today. They need to have access to very high quality professional development. And in Shanghai and other parts of the world, educators are spending about 360 hours in a year engaging in professional learning, right? So that they can always be able to give up their best because the trends of learning and in education is evolving and changing. Yeah. And it's important that educators really equip themselves with the relevant tools and techniques and strategies and approaches in order to be of their best to their students and make learning happen for any child across the continent.
Wow, that also makes it even more compelling for us to now look into ensuring that there's high quality professional development for educators so that we can actually address the outcome gap that we just talked about. So why should we be concerned about this as educators in all the things that we've been talking about? Why should we be concerned?
You see, we've seen the outcomes and we've seen that a number of our kids, in the hundreds, thousands of kids, are actually making little or no progress. And they spend a lot of time really doing remedial works outside outside school after leaving school, instead of doing a lot of remedial works in class. So that
doing classes. So if you can put it that way, so that it's identifiable by the Ghanaian context also. Yes. Going for classes.
Going for remedial classes instead of doing remedial works within their class while they were in school, right? So that that time could have been actually been maximized in ensuring that there will be better outcomes for them as well. But one thing that we need to note that, as we pointed out, that there are certain essential skills that every student needs to have in order to be able to fully assess a curriculum that they are required or expected to go through. One thing that we need to notice is that the curriculum itself can be a reason for students' lack of progress or little progress or slow progress that they make. And because if the educator who is supposed to deliver the curriculum does not fully understand the needed or required skill sets to really develop it in students so that they can fully assess it, then it tells you that a lot of students can go through the school system but have not really experienced the curriculum and will not be able to excel in the assessment that relates to that particular curriculum. And that clearly indicates that a number of low attaining students lack these requisite skills to be able to assess the curriculum. So what students who make progress have is that they have these skills of being able to fully develop an understanding of an idea. Okay. And this is something that most curriculum actually require that students should be able to have. They have high expectations of themselves academically. They have high academic expectations of themselves. And they also have acquired the required literacy and numeracy skills in order to understand, to comprehend, and assess fully the curriculum that they are being exposed to. And they also have sound recall, right? That because, I mean, there are levels of thinking and everything starts with knowing. If we look at the Bloom's taxonomy, which we're going to reference in this conversation, student needs to have the facts and they need to be able to comprehend the facts and they need to determine the significance of the facts. But the first thing is that students have to have sound recall of the facts because they need to know the facts. And if they don't have the facts, it's likely that they are not going to make good progress. And in my own professional work, I've come across a number of students, unfortunately, that at times after assessing them over a period of time, you get to know that they've been sitting in the class, but they really did not have the facts. And that is the sad part because you cannot do any higher level of thinking work when you don't have the facts or the knowledge, the base knowledge that is required to really appreciate and understand the big concepts in a particular discipline. And that is why some students do not make progress because they do not have the skill sets. So oftentimes we all know our low attaining students. We see these characteristics in them and we kind of label them, okay, based on these symptoms instead of appreciating the root causes of it, that it is actually a lack of skill gap. Right? Lack is a skill gap challenge that they are facing. That is why they are covering. I have seen students who cannot spell correctly, and for that matter, they just scribble. They don't write legibly, but they are.
I'm one of them.
they are hiding their lack of ability, right, to spell correctly. Right? And teachers don't know, and they can't. Just by looking at somebody's handwriting, the teacher can alter certain words that really, at the bottom line, is just going to affect the child's self-esteem and his confidence, and does not enable this child to really have a good expectation, high expectation of themselves, and have an interest even in the subject so that they can make the required progress. So these students are always struggling to understand what is expected of them. They find it difficult to appreciate and understand and learn new concepts. They are always off task. At times, some are sleeping, some are fidgeting with a number of things or doing something that is completely irrelevant to the learning that is happening in the classroom. They are easily distracted.
They tend to be the students that we describe as stubborn.
Exactly. So, but the point is that there is an undercurrent. And that undercurrent, if it is not addressed, okay, it's the bottom line is that it affects the child's self-esteem and affects his confidence. And the only way for that child to feel belong and to survive in that space is to give you some attitude or misbehavior, right? And it doesn't mean that that child is bad. I mean, or that child does not want to learn, but it's because maybe the instruction in that classroom does not really addresses his gaps and does not enable that child to make the required progress in learning.
It's very, very clear to see that when these students show these symptoms, we easily misinterpret the symptoms to be a fault from them not willing to learn and all that. Now, how do we go about dealing with the problems that they have so that we can actually help them also attain and get the needed standards that they are capable of getting?
All right, so if you've been with us with our last series on direct instructional teaching approach, it was clear that if students have structured learning experiences, we are able to obtain a higher rate of success from them in learning, right? And that is what these students need. They need very direct and structured learning, right? The teacher has to be, it's more of like the teacher has to do a lot of telling with a lot of guided practice sessions where the teacher is doing it with them and then do it over time till the child has been able to master that concept before they allow them to do something on their own, which we were calling the independent practice work. So they need that. They need that direct, structured learning experiences. And if you have to teach any class that has low attendance in them, which I pretty much believe that is is a story of every educator, right? Then it means that don't toy with your preparation. I'm not just talking about writing a lesson plan. I'm talking about preparing for each lesson.
Okay.
Right? You have to be deliberate because you need to really
hold on with that. You said we should, it's not just about the lesson plan, but preparing. For a number of us, preparation means I've put together my lesson plan. And if it's about whichever textbooks we are going to use, I know that, and probably I'll refer the students to the textbooks that we're going to use. Is there more to this that you're talking about in terms of our preparation?
Yes, you know, you can actually write a lesson plan and not prepare for the lesson. And when I'm talking about preparation, I'm talking about you plan the lesson from the beginning to the end, but if you are preparing, then you have to be thinking about those that what you have planned, right? The lesson you plan are meant for.
Okay.
Right. And in preparation, you are thinking about each stage of the plan as to whether it will be relevant and suitable for the audience.
Okay.
Right. So what do you need to do here? What do you need to add here? What resources, additional resources that you need to bring to the class to make each stage of the plan, learning experience for the students, really work to the desirable expectations. It requires a lot of work. Maybe you have to prepare some worksheets. Maybe you have to have some additional resources, not just for the entire class, but for
a set of them.
Yeah, for a set of them who are your students that makes little or no progress in your class. You really are thinking through about what they will need to be able to assess that kind of that lesson or that learning experience that you have planned for them. So you need to think through how they respond. You need to anticipate their problems and prepare for that. What will you do? What do you need to have, right? And I know with educators, beyond the resource gaps, we need to find more creative ways of addressing student gaps by going all out and making sure that we really can see the end points of the lesson from the beginning as we commences the lesson that we're about to teach, and that we have everything that we need to make sure that every child in that class, that instruction is accessible to them.
Okay. All right. So now that we know that preparation and having structure is key, what else do we need to pay particular attention to so that these lower attainers can also have learning?
There are a number of things that we can do to make the learning effective for these categories of students. It's important that we give them the big picture idea. We need to concentrate on the key concepts or the ideas in your curriculum. You should go through your curriculum and really identify all the big concepts or the big ideas that you have to teach your students. And you need to give them a picture of that, how it looks like from the beginning to the end, if you have mastered that concept, right? So that is because low attaining students have problems in actually seeing linkages between ideas or concepts. And that is why it's important that the teacher should just look at the curriculum and really understand all the key concepts that the curriculum is built upon, and that he's able to bring out the linkages and ideas clearly to students so that they can also appreciate the big picture of it. And developing their literacy and numeracy skill in every lesson is also one key thing that you should work towards. We'll talk about specific things that we can actually do to do this. Also using formative assessment to really help students understand the learning intentions, what they are aiming for, and what success look like, what a good response, a good answer, or a good attempt at solving problems or producing the products of learning, which is the assessment, really looks like. So they need to recognize success within the class. And I'm sure if you've been with us, you know that is a direct instructional approach, which is a full series we've done on learning intention and success criteria. So actually they need structure. There has to be a structured approach with all the plenaries, the starters that we talked about, but ensure that you situate the curriculum in with students' own life experiences, right? Don't teach the curriculum as an abstract thing, right? Make the curriculum relevant to the students' own everyday experiences. And that is very important in helping them to remember, because if the learning is not memorable, it makes it very difficult for such students to really make the required progress. And from the instructional point of view, it's important that when you're teaching, use techniques that makes instruction highly interactive.
Okay.
Okay, so presentations should not be boring. Presentations should be mixed with demonstration. There should be modeling. There should be questions that will enable students to really think through, search more before they find answers, using essential questions to drive your lessons. One very key techniques, as well as providing an element of challenge in your lessons. There's a need for what is known as a productive struggle. Even for the very top attaining student, there should be an element of struggle so that the lessons or the instruction will be a bit demanding on everybody's ability. And that is important for the brain, especially because the work doesn't have to be so easy, neither does it have to be so hard, but it has to be right. And that is why in differentiated instruction, we talked about respectful tasks being designed for students, but we need to teach up in terms of providing the right amount of challenge in every task that you give a learner. in order to really awaken their agency and their willingness to really know and find out more and experience the curriculum in a more in-depth and meaningful way. And I think these are things educators can do. I think as we progress, we'll talk into the specifics that we can actually do in everyday lessons to help students that make slow progress actually accelerate their progress in their learning.
As you shared these things that we need to do, I could clearly see why some students struggle. I mean, when you talk about the fact that they need structure, they need to know that from this stage, this is where we go into, and that this is what success looks like. Although sometimes we take it for granted, and the students that are high attainers have their own way of identifying things for themselves, and they can go at the pace that we do. And sometimes our low attainers tend to be left out in all this. You even talked about the fact that they need to see the big picture. I've seen situations whereby students have been taught and they don't even know that this topic or this objective is under this broad theme that was being considered. And so they have no way of even revising properly for assessment. So when summative assessment is done, you see them performing poorly. It's all because they can't make the linkages. They don't see the big picture. There's no mapping of the big idea with the sub-concepts that are treated. And so, like you said, advanced preparation is key, and preparing for the lesson is very key for these things. But how do we motivate and engage these learners to learn? Because I could also see that sometimes the drive for them to learn, the self-awareness and the self-confidence for them to even succeed can be very low. How do we motivate and engage such learners also to learn?
So like we've said earlier, that because we look at their symptoms and judge them, we are actually contributing to negatively affecting their self-esteem. And that tells you that students that are low attainers, they are one of the categories of learners that are most difficult for educators to motivate or keep motivated, for you to keep them motivated for learning. But there are a number of things that we can do. If we understand what motivates them, for instance, and apply strategies that really motivate them to take the essential steps in lifting their performance, then we can go a long way in really bringing them from the other side of saying that I don't like this lesson because I'm not doing well and I cannot do well in it, which is more of the expression of the fixed mindset, to a growth mindset that says that you've not been doing well yet, but now these are some of the things that if you keep doing and you start doing, you can be able to make the required progress. But there are specific things that educators can do, and there are things that these low attainers from research are pointing to the fact that it's important for them to learn. One of it is a personal relationship with a teacher. And if I ask the educators that are just listening to us, that think about one of your favorite teachers in your whole school life. I mean, if you have a degree, you spend about 15 hours in school, 15,000 hours in school. And the research points to the fact that at least you should have one person in your entire education experience that really you can say, that was my teacher, that was my best teacher. And you will know that that's somebody that you really had a personal relationship with.
Yeah.
And it is clear from the visible learning research meta-analysis that teacher-student relationship has a bigger effect on students' learning, but it has a greater effect for those who makes less progress. If the teacher recognizes that student as an individual and interacts with them as an individual and see them as an important part of the lesson and their voices are heard, no matter how seemingly silly they might sound, and is appreciated and corrected, so that the child can contribute and make the required input so that they can unlearn, learn, and relearn in order to be able to discover the facts and be able to comprehend them correctly. Then that child will be now come to the point of really having an interest, not just in you alone, but also in the subject. And that is what I would say, that everyone who was a favorite teacher did like the subject of that teacher.
Yeah.
You understand that? So this is very important, making the lesson interesting, bringing a lot of variety, and situating the learning in the everyday experiences of the child is important. These are also techniques that the low attaining students say that is helpful for their own learning. For example, having the keywords for the lesson on their decks or on the wall. So if you are teaching, for example, demand, the concept of demand, there are certain keywords that a student should learn to use. The demand itself, quantity demanded, changes in demanded, contraction, extension. These are terms that they will need to be using in explaining those concepts and appreciating the concept form. If those keywords in that topic, in that lesson, is clearly given to the student, the meaning is given out to them. Students can say out the new words aloud, having the opportunity to practice writing them in sentences, right? So if they can use that words in sentences, right, correctly, what are you doing? You are helping them to really demonstrate the comprehension of these key terms, right? And once they have the key terms, which is the technical language of the subject, and any subject, whether it's chemistry, physics, even English language, there are technical words that are keywords that student needs to learn to appreciate. So teaching the vocabularies and helping students comprehend these technical words or vocabulary of a subject or a discipline is one key thing that teachers can do, right, to help low attaining students to learn. Another thing that teachers can do is a we do it together thing. There should be a lot of guided practice. For example, analyzing text together. Analysis is very key. It's a very high order skill, right? Helping somebody to see the constituent parts of an idea and how they link together, right? That is a high order learning that it is a struggle for most low attaining students. But if a teacher works with that student over a period of time and show them how to analyze, how to write analytical piece, how to write an evaluative response, over time, they will learn as a practicer, they will learn to do those works. One thing that is important for them is also repeating newly learned skills until it has been crystallized in their minds. You know, a lot of the works we do in our school is kind of masked and blocked. So you teach fractions today, we do some exercises on fractions, we move on to percentages, we do some work on percentages, then we shelve that, we move on to something else, we keep shelving and doing exercise. And you see that this student, from fractions to percentages to ratios and proportions, he has, in the exercises that the students have done, he might be scoring less than half of that. So it tells you that most of the skill set and the knowledge and the understanding that the student needs to acquire, he's not been able to do that, right? But if you had stayed with the fraction, right, and helped the students perform a series of exercises spaced over time until the student master it, even once you move on to percentages, you do same repeatedly. Right? We remember the series we did on guided practice. We said that practice is a repeated exercise until the person is able to acquire, maintain, or improve his or her proficiency. Right? So if teachers have that, then these low attainers can make progress because they will be doing the same work over a period of time, even though they are making progress on the other content as well. And one key thing is that we need to give them things in bits, right? Instead of massing everything, rather chunk it, right? And help the child to review just a small part of the lesson over a period of time. Okay, so that is also one important thing that really helps them to learn and make the required progress. Modeling is very key, showing the student how what they are learning actually links with other work. And this thing is very key. Any child who is struggling in the class, one thing they cannot really comprehend is the links in ideas. And you know that you cannot make a better grade in school if you cannot link all the concepts, right? Because you move up higher the Bloom's taxonomy. You will not stay with just knowing the facts. Yeah. You need to comprehend the facts. You need to use up the facts or apply them. And you need to be able to see the links in the facts in terms of analyzing and even bringing different facts together to create new ideas, synthesizing, as well as judging the significance of the facts that you have. These are higher levels of learning, and appreciating how concepts piece together to tell a story is one key skill that students need. But they will need you to show them. Don't just tell them that, okay, you need to do this, this, and that. But you have to show them exactly how the ideas link together, right? And over time, these students will be able to appreciate that. Collaborative learning is important. Learning from their peers, working with others is one key thing. And we've talked about the fact that they need to see the whole thing, the big picture of their learning and how the learning progresses. So another key aspect of this is also helping them to see an abstract idea using modeling and analogy. Okay, so if you're dealing with very abstract concepts, like those in chemistry, organic chemistry, right? If you're dealing with very abstract concepts, do your best, right, in using resources around you in helping the students to visualize it, right, through modeling. I think that student, you might have taught the concept as you know best, but you might have not helped that student to learn it if he or she cannot see it. Another strategy that works with low attaining students is feedback. They need immediate feedback on the work. It's not just written feedback, but actually oral, verbal feedback, one-on-one, and exactly what to do to improve their work. And you need to praise them when they make the needed progress. Another strategy that we technique is providing them an opportunity to really improve their work and correct their mistakes. Repeated work or redo work is very important, and it helps students who make low progress also really accelerates their progress and their learning. Situating whatever is being taught to students' everyday life experience is also one key technique that teachers can use to help students that make less slow progress actually make the required progress. When it comes to writing, which is one of the literacy gaps that can be dealt with, you have to give students a writing frame in order to structure their writings. For instance, if you want them to write about how to do something, first, next, those connectives are very important in helping students to have a flow of their thoughts from the beginning of how to do the things to the end. If you want them to explain why, you also can use a writing frame, for example, that can enable them to give a reason. One of the things that we use is appeal. Make a point, give an example, show an evidence, and link what you have said in this paragraph to the next new idea that you are about to present. So these are things that you can give them to help them to start writing that kind of structure. Obviously, making learning fun is one key technique that teachers can use, and that is using games, gamifying the learning is one thing that teachers can use to really bring enthusiasm and positivity and excitement in the lessons for them. And a loom card is one of the things that we can use, for example, in helping students to play by learning the keywords or the key technical words in a particular discipline. Frequently setting tasks which guarantee success for them is key. Don't give them work that is too easy and work that is too hard. But knowing their skill level, you need to scaffold the assessment or the practice work in such a manner that the students can show progress. Teachers need to design tasks, assessment tasks for low attaining students in such a manner that it will guarantee success for them. And the more success that they experience with their learning, the more motivated and engaged they will be in their learning, and the better it will be for enhancing their learning and their progress. This strategy is very important. You can never improve a student's performance when you have not really understood as a teacher what you need to teach them to move to the next level, or have helped the students themselves to really appreciate what they need to be doing, A, B, C, D, to really achieve the learning targets. So a knowledge of the learning intentions and how progress look like in your subject is very helpful in helping students to know what exactly they need to be doing in order to move on to the next phase of their learning in making the required progress. One other key strategy in relation to this is to use the Bloom's taxonomy, because the Bloom's taxonomy clearly outlines the levels of thinking, which reflects every curriculum. With every curriculum, there are certain things you need to know, there are certain things you need to understand, and there are certain things you should be able to do. So when students can see that progression, that, okay, I should know the facts, these are the facts, I should show that I have comprehended it, maybe by giving example or offering explanation or summarizing, and I can use these facts in solving a problem, in predicting an outcome for a particular event or a scenario, or doing demonstrations. Then the students can see that they have moved from just knowing and they are moving to a higher level of thinking gradually, right? And that higher bracket is where you're doing the analysis, synthesis, as well as evaluative work. And it's important that a child sees how they are growing or developing along these levels of thinking, which is in every curriculum area and which is also reflective of the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so this is one key skill, a key technique that I encourage teachers to do. You see, before you start teaching a unit, it will help if you create a concept map of all the things that the students needs to be learning in that particular unit, right? From the beginning, you show.
From the beginning, you said, not at the end.
Not at the end. From the beginning, let them see the big picture. So this is a key concept, the big idea that we're dealing with. Let them see, are they supposed to know the meaning of it? Are they supposed to, like if you are using my subject demand, the concept of demand, maybe they have to know what is demand. They should be able to represent demand in a table or in a graphical form. They should show the demand curve. They should explain the nature of the demand curve, identify the factors that influence demand. These are all things that they'll be learning. So let them see that, okay? And once you do that, at the beginning of every lesson within that unit, it's important that the teacher make reference to it where they have reached on the concept map. So for instance, if you are now moved from meaning of demand and the demand theory to now looking at the determinants of demand in the second lesson, it's important that the students know that this is how we've moved in this unit from this concepts. So you are doing some review to continually check whether the initial lesson within the unit has been grasped, and then the second lesson within the unit, the students have been told, and I expect that this will be on the wall, for instance, or the teacher, if resources allow you, you can actually print this like kind of like a course outline, but in a graphical form that shows. Yes.
If I get you, this is like the roadmap to the concept being treated,
exactly.
Which is done like when you visit shopping malls and the others, you are here, and if you want to go to the washroom is here. Then from there you go to this place. Teachers need to create that kind of roadmap for the lesson or for the concept.
For the units. For the units.
Okay.
For the unit of study, which has several lessons under them, right? So at the beginning of that unit.
Lesson to do this, not just straight away start teaching the concept.
No. You see, if you have a unit of study, there are several lessons under each unit, right? So the first lesson you are dealing with, the students have to see the big idea picture, the big picture of what is in this topic, all the things you'll be learning, the key vocabularies you need to understand and be able to define or explain what they are meant, the key learning intentions, all of that should be known to the students. So as the unit progresses, right, lesson after lesson, it is important that the teacher is referencing where they are on that map, on that journey. In, for instance, grasping the idea of demand, consumer choice within economics, right? So that the students are with the teacher and they can see where they've started from and how this lesson or this unit is actually going to end. Why should teachers do this? It is a quick check for students. And secondly, it helps students to see the linking ideas, okay, within the unit. And that is very key for every child that struggles. If they cannot link the ideas together, they will not be able to move their learning on significantly. They cannot do that. So if you do that for them, if you map up how the idea sequence throughout, and I would say that teachers even have to do this beyond their curriculum. Like for example, if you are a grade 1 teacher, a grade 2 teacher, or a grade 3 teacher, it's important that if you know the big ideas, we'll start from grade 1 through grade 2 up to for whatever levels the students will be going. So grade 1 teacher needs to know their curriculum, know the curriculum for grade 2, as well as the curriculum for the early years of what the students already know before they came into their class. So what they are teaching, it should help the students to see the picture from what they already know that is relevant to this current unit of study and what they will be covering in only grade 1 and what they will be doing in grade 2, right? So that when the
work is related to the grade 2 work, so that
yes,
the students look forward to, oh, so when you get to grade 2, this is how this particular concept becomes relevant to us.
Exactly. So this big picture map is very important. At the beginning of every unit, you might have 10 or 5 lessons in that unit. You need to let the students see how progression look like and how the ideas link together. And if you can do that for a student who struggles, that is a very useful way in really getting them interested and motivated to learn and make the required progress that they need to in that grade level.
I think we've done quite a lot, even in this very first episode of this particular series on enabling learning. What would we say in a summary affects learners so that they make slow progress?
All right, so it's obvious that in Ghana, if you look at learning outcome, literacy and numeracy skill gaps really affect students' progress in our schools. And it's important that we have professional development for educators that enable them to incorporate the teaching of these skills across the curriculum, ensuring that all our students make the required progress. Another key aspect of this the discussion is underachievement or continual lack of progress for many students really affects their self-esteem, and it does not really motivate and encourage them to get engaged in learning and to move their learning on significantly. So as educators, as we said throughout, there are a number of techniques we can do as shared in this presentation. One of it is incorporating the teaching of literacy and numeracy skills across our subject areas, engaging our students in deliberate and spaced guided practice sessions in class, encouraging collaborative learning, making learning fun by using game-based learning strategies to motivate and engage your students in order to learn and make significant progress. And I think that if educators are committed to this, we will be able to have a number of students in this year and beyond really showing greater progress in our classrooms and our schools. And then the overall standard-based assessment will show greater significant improvement, especially in numeracy, as well as in other subject areas.
Thank you very much, Kwesi, for that wonderful summary. I can see this series on enabling learning will speak to the core of the issues about learning and about achievements. And so, like you just said, numeracy and literacy skills across the curriculum is a key area that we all need to be focusing on, such that the students that struggle will be able to also get the needed attainment that is desired. Preparation in terms of us guided practice for the students, spacing the practice, encouraging collaborative learning, and making learning fun is one of the sure ways by which we can help our learners to grow. We'd like to invite you all to the next in the series, which will be effective techniques to aid students recall. Effective techniques to aid students recall. And then we'll follow up subsequently with creating multiple pathways for meaningful learning, building literacy and numeracy skills across the subjects, and then use of formative assessment to improve students' learning and attainment. Please look out for edutransform.gh on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and all the other channels. And then subscribe, join us, share our works with the others so that together we can help educators across Africa turn around and ensure that learners do get the needed successes that they yearn for. It's been great having all of you, and we hope to see you next week as we continue the discussion on enabling learning. Thank you for your time today, and bye-bye.